How was the weekend sutrathon?
It was a bit challenging because the internet kept dropping. We relocated down to the office in the afternoon.
I'd rather have been where you were. The pictures were great. You take really good photos.
It's just my phone.
Yeah, but it's
In the place.
It's the picture. Yeah, it's the picture. You kept it. Your pictures are all right. Your photos are very
Okay.
It's very nice.
I have actually.
Good.
You know, it's so close, and I can't believe that I've been here for 15 years and I've never been there. I mean, I have to say,
I haven't seen this since I moved up here, which is a tragedy. It's supposed to just
I mean, I haven't been even to Bribey Island. I haven't been to Morton Island. I haven't been to the moon as well.
I haven't been to the whatever one as well. No, never been to the other island. No, anyway, it's got too many seals.
All right, let's do obeisance to Manjushri. Page 12, page 12, page 12. Since to my guru and protector Manjushri halted his heart in scripture passing God while seeing those things as yet. Understanding shines both who teaches in 60 ways with a passion love the Father was only Son. All creatures caught in the prison of sunset. Occasionally the darkness following whose kind and the proclamation of the dawn rises from the street of without suffering wherever its parts appear, clearing away the darkness and following. Treacher and treasure, princely body adorned with 100. Who has completed 10 stages of achieving the highest perfection of Bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O mind, Joshua, love, one with the brilliance of your bliss. Illuminate the darkness of my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words in the text that explain. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, the highest assembly. On the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be around the benefit of all living beings. For refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, the highest assembly. On the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of the Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. All right, how's everyone?
Well, thank you.
So I've been having a conversation with a couple of friends, just kind of thought that it seems that almost everywhere you look, people have problems and issues, and they're kind of communities are in turmoil, countries are in turmoil, society is in turmoil. I mean, I think that kind of we look at it here at Shimrazek Institute, kind of we've been going through the motions up and down, and we have intense times and times in which everything is pretty relaxed. Now I think that it's slightly more intense, but it's not only here, it's also, I think, in Australia in general. I mean, but we're pretty, I think, fortunate comparing to definitely the USA. It's a good point of reference, unfortunately. I've been following the news from Israel, and since that the society in Israel is also kind of in a fast track to breaking down. So, sorry, Lebanon, yeah. And also, it's pretty demoralizing when we think of what where the world is going, what is happening to us, and part of it is, I think, the insecurity that we have with respect to the future. Everything is totally unclear. We don't know how things are going to be in a month from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, a couple of years from now. It seems that kind of everything is uncertain, so we're freaking out and we're at each other's throats, so to speak. We're not here, but in general, humanity, it seems. But I think that at least the people that are here, I think that we are quite fortunate in that we have the ability to look at our mind, implement those teachings to our mind. If you can do something about it, do it. Don't be too overwhelmed or too edgy. And if there's nothing that you can do about it, what's the point of being worried about it, right? So it's easier said than done, but sometimes it's good to kind of remind yourself that comparing to others, the situation is not that great, that bad. Anyway, so what I thought of doing today was to look at some of the points that Geshe has covered today, and continuing on from what we started off in the previous week. I think that we don't have a lot of complicated things that we've covered today. I think that nothing today was overly complicated. So hopefully we'll have time to not only cover one secondary offense, maybe we can do 2 or 3. Let's see how it goes. So to begin with, I'm wondering if you have any questions arising from things that we've done today, from the review questions that I sent out for the weekend, or something from the previous week.
Is that the way you ask the question? I just want to get clarity.
All right, Jace?
Yeah, just a short one. I was going to ask Geshe, but I think it was a detail. I mean, Geshe was talking today about, I think when we're practicing meditating stuff, I think you were sort of saying you might start to get a little bit subtler, and that duality that we think is so concrete, I think starts to soften a little bit where we think emotions and energies and stuff are confined isn't so much so. But I was just wondering if there was a correlation between that and I've always wondered why yogis have to go to to a cave where there's no one. It seems like they have to do that because their mind has got so subtle that the energy, if I was hypothetically in a city or something, would be too for their practice.
So I'll try to, I'm not sure that the people at home had you. No, it's okay. Yeah. So I'll just kind of rephrase what you said, and let's see if I'm going in the right direction with your question. So, Geshe alluded in his explanation that in a meditation practice, the mind is becoming more and more subtle. So you're wondering, why do yogis traditionally, when they go on retreat, they go into secluded places, when they're looking for a quiet place so that the mind can become, the place itself is more and more quiet. Does it affect the mind? Is that more or less what you're asking?
Yeah, just in direct correlation between what Geshe was saying with the crossover of energies,
yeah,
and just thought in my head, oh, I wonder if that's, I have thought this for a while actually, I wonder if that's part of why practitioners like that go into seclude, not so much because it disturbs their mind, but more because it seems like it's a lot of background noise or something. It could be like an obstacle to get to a subtle level of consciousness or reality or something like that.
All right. So I'll kind of just answer. Oh, I'll pull out a couple of points. Just came up to me as you were asking a question. So I'm kind of going to think of on my feet, so to speak. So I think that first off, we use the word gompa. This is like, for example, Chenrezig Institute's gompa. But the actual meaning of the word gompa in Tibetan is seclusion. So it is said that monastics in general should live at a gompa because it's a place that is secluded. Secluded means that it is of a certain distance from a township or from a village life, which means that you'd be less prone to have a day-to-day interaction with people that you're used to. You'd be more removed from society. There would be less interruption to your study and practice. So that is the meaning of the word gompa in general. So in that sense, you want to create some gap between the hustle and bustle of the world so that your mind would be more focused on study, reflection, meditation. So that's in general. I think that is here Buddhism is moving from Tibetan society to our society. And I think that most students, most people that are interested in Buddhism are obviously non-monastic. So, living in a monastery is not applicable to most people, but still we can look at a certain lifestyle in which there is a reduction of the hustle and bustle of the world so that there is more space that is created for study, reflection, meditation. I mean, I think that we can all of us agree based upon a personal experience that if we have a very busy social life, it comes at a certain expense. Not only we have less time to spend on study, reflection, and meditation, but at least as far as I'm concerned, from my personal experience, my mind becomes so scattered. When I, like for example, I try to do all my meditation commitments, at least the one that I want to take really seriously. I try to do them early in the morning, because if I leave them later on, midday or in the evening, it is so hard to just get the mind to be focused because of all the hustle and bustle that I've been involved with. And particularly when I have really busy days with lots of social interactions, the mind is really scattered. So that is at least my experience. So living in a secluded place, in an isolated place, has the benefit of less scattered energies, so to speak, but just being more focused. But I think that in a more specific way, then that's in general, in a more specific way, when you look at the prerequisites for attaining calm abiding, it says that you need to rely upon the conducive conditions for calm abiding. And the first point is the point of the place, where there are 5, as far as I remember, 5 features that have to do with the place. A suitable place means that it is less susceptible to noises from the outside. You have favorable conditions in terms of access to food, provisions. It is not susceptible to epidemics or wild animals. And also you have suitable companionship. So again, I think that you're trying to create a situation in which there's less interruption from the outside, either by means of just external voices, or at least if you're trying to cultivate calm abiding, then it is not suitable to do it next to a waterfall or next to a raging river, or a place that has howling wind, for most of the day and night. That would be not a suitable place for beginners.
It seems to, what we actually talked about last week, I vaguely remember he sort of giving advice, general advice about 4 a.m. is a very good time to
Yeah.
And it seems like it's like a representation of reality, like it's the mind is more still, and you're getting closer to that, the nature of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that kind of,
It's also a quieter time.
Yeah.
It's before the birds start.
Yeah.
And it's after
It's
the
like,
rain stopped.
like Carlton said, if I'm caught up in the day, like I go to work, it's quite busy.
yeah,
It's like your mind's all blown because you've taken this high level of consciousness of other people and stuff like that. And then to sort of Geshe was saying last week is that when you wake up in the morning, that level is not there, it's very still.
yeah.
So it helps you practice a lot,
I mean, we are fortunate to be living here where there is less kind of interaction of people from the outside. Of course, we have visitors, but it's not a city way of living. I think that particularly if you live in a city or a town or whatever, where you have traffic or other noises, I think it's even more so. You have more peace of mind. I think more quiet. It's more spacious if you start your meditation practice early, when just the world hasn't waken up yet. And then I think that also when I think about it in terms of Tibetan society, which is a very social society, much more social than our society. Like people like to hang out with others just because this is what people do. It's like they live in you grow up in a really big family situation, village situation, where people just hang out with each other all the time. And if you find yourself completely alone, it's in some sense, it's disconcerting. So also I think that, so I kind of think about it in terms of living your life as a yogi. If you want to make your practice really deeper, make your mind more subtle, you also have to cut through that level of social interactions to begin, at the beginning, with a lot of social interaction and discussions and so forth. Also, it is likely that your energy will be quite scattered.
So the question is resentment towards anger a consciousness that accords with the fact?
Yeah.
It's that accords with the fact.
It's like, does it accord with reality? I mean, it's another way of saying that, is it a wrong consciousness and not wrong consciousness? Is resentment towards the affliction, is it a wrong consciousness? Does it agree with reality? Is it correct to have resentment towards the affliction, or is it a wrong consciousness that needs to be abandoned? Or
So I guess as long as resentment remains focused on the affliction of anger.
You mean that's how you would ask it? You would answer it? Sorry. Yeah, you can say so. You can say that.
Which accords with the facts. In other words, it is an appropriate way of thinking, as long as it remains focused on the consciousness of anger. We don't internalize.
Well, I would say that also I would add to that kind of when you recognize the drawbacks of anger and you see all the faults of anger, it makes sense to resent it from the viewpoint of it is just a faulty situation. There's nothing positive in anger. There are only drawbacks to anger. So in that sense, when you recognize that it is only a faulty state of mind, it is correct to dislike anger, to resent it.
Yes, as long as resentment remains focused on the affliction of anger, which only leads to a dissatisfactory way of being, dissatisfied mind, and will create non-virtues.
Yeah, it is solely negative.
Yeah, it can just expand it all like that.
Yeah. I mean, I left this question in a general sense because it's kind of, when we speak about resentment towards the affliction, since we should resent the afflictions because they cause us problems. Yeah. There are problems with the afflictions. Then would you say that resentment towards the affliction is a valid consciousness? Is it a valid cognition?
Resentment?
Yeah, towards the affliction, is it a valid cognition?
it's resentment.
No. There are no cognitive obscurations that are consciousnesses. So is it a valid cognition from the point of to begin with? Is it realizing its object towards the affliction? I mean, not just resentment in general, resentment towards the affliction. Well, I have a problem in saying that it is a valid cognition because, valid cognition needs to be a realizing consciousness. So it's hard, at least it's hard for me personally to say that towards is a realizing consciousness, in that resentment seems to be totally incongruous, incompatible with valid cognition. Since it's kind of, I would say that it agrees with reality in that the faults with the afflictions, anger is solely negative, but I'm hesitant to go so far as saying that resentment towards anger is a valid cognition.
Well, I mean, that was the point that I was trying to make on the teaching. And Geshe seemed to imply, didn't he imply that, it's valid if it remains focused on anger?
I think that, there's no kind of, in some of the review questions, I bring put forward questions that are just good to think of. It's not that necessarily that I have like the complete and only right answer to some of those questions, but I think that, sometimes they highlight certain things that it's good to think of. I think that, as I said, to resent the afflictions agrees with reality, it goes with the fact because afflictions are negative, but I wouldn't go as far as say that resentment towards the affliction is a valid cognition, because valid cognition is a realizing consciousness. And it's hard to say that resentment towards anything is a realizing consciousness.
So what we're saying it's probably a perfect assumption.
It's an antidote. It's an antidote.
It's an antidote.
I mean, I guess the fact that you recognize that anger is wrong and have resentment towards that, you're realizing something, right?
Yeah. So, maybe you can say that rather than thinking of whether resentment to the affliction is a wrong consciousness or whether it's a valid cognition, you can start pulling it out, kind of looking at parts of resentment to the affliction. I think that, as Sharp said, when you recognize that there is a problem with anger, that are faults to anger, you can realize that actually that could be a valid cognition. That's definitely, if you realize that anger is wholly negative, you're already. Sorry?
That is a valid cognition, but it's not resentment.
Yeah, that is a valid cognition, but it's not resentment. So, that's why I said that kind of you break it apart into different parts of it. So the recognition of the fault of anger can definitely be a valid cognition. Yeah. Then the disliking of it, again, kind of when I'm thinking out loud, you can dislike sentient being suffering. Particularly here when we think of the Mahayana tradition, we develop a sense of dislike to others' suffering, and this is part of the development of compassion. So, sorry?
Dislike people suffering at some level, like that seems like a cruel bodhisattva that you get to so overwhelming that just seeing one sentient being suffering. You're sort of suffering in this sense, and you just can't bear it, so you want to help.
So maybe you can say that there is a positive and negative sense of dislike. You can dislike something with a kind of negative intention to harm mind, or you can dislike something to the point in which you think that this is not right, this is not a positive situation, I need to do something about the situation without developing that negative, hating intention to harm kind of state of mind.
That's kind of like what resentment is. It's a negative hating.
Sorry?
That's what resentment kind of is. A negative hating kind of like put a lot of strength behind. Whereas like I would think if you're trying to get rid of anger, that you might kind of like try to pull it down. Like maybe like meditating on the unfeeling aspects of the object or something like that. Instead of resentment, which seems like an overpowering kind of angry mind, even though it's like trying to attach, get rid of anger. It's kind of like putting heat on heat and ending up with it like.
Well, it seems that the language that is used here in Shantideva's text, but also in other texts that teach the methods for patience or the methods for overcoming the afflictions, do use this terminology of resenting the afflictions or becoming angry with anger. So I think that maybe this language is used, and maybe we can say that we resent anger. We get angry with anger from the viewpoint of coming to see it as solely negative, something that is only faulty. There is no positive quality to anger. So from that perspective, we resent it. But it's not resentment in the way that you described it, in like this heavy, vindictive, wanting to just harm something with that kind of dark state of mind. It is resentment from the point of view of saying that it is faulty and not who's seeking for it. Anyway.
So in Tibetan, are they different words?
Sorry?
In Tibetan, is it the same word?
Yeah, it's the same word.
I think about it in relation to the wrathful deity. It's that kind of, you need that strength to cut through.
Yeah.
So like Mahakala being as wrathful affliction raises. So it's still compassion, but
Yeah.
it's like a wrathful cutting compassion that cuts through the illusion.
Yeah.
And it needs that strength to do it because the anger's been there since the beginning of time. We need.
Yeah. Great. All right. So let's quickly, what I wanted to do now is to quickly look at just a section that we've covered today. Keep in mind that we're looking at the 5th chapter, and the 5th chapter says, in general, I think that we've summarized it on Thursday, saying that once we develop Bodhisattva and we've taken the engaging vow, we need to be conscientious about the mind. We need to be conscientious about the training. The way to is to guard the mind. Right? So the way to guard the mind is through mindfulness and alertness, or mindfulness and vigilance. This is what the 5th chapter is teaching, how to guard introspection of vigilance. So in the previous session, we looked at the general presentation, then the method for guarding the trainings. By guarding the mind, one comes to guard all. So this is what we've covered in the previous section, the previous week, sorry. Then today we picked up from the reason for that. We actually spoke in the previous week of wrongdoing depends upon the mind, and the synopsis at the end says that, let's look at what the last 2 lines in verse 8 said. So it said, there is nothing to fear other than my own mind, which was a continuation of verse 7 and first 2 lines of verse 8. Who intended of the hellbeings, who created the burning iron ground? From what did all those hosts of women ensue? The Muni taught that all such things are the negative mind. I think that did we have a conversation about Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation of the hell realms versus what Shantideva says here? Do we have the discussion?
Versus what?
What Shantideva says here.
Yeah.
So we did. All right. So since here Shantideva says that all the hell realms and so forth arise from the mind, yes, we did, because Tupten brought up the Sutra of Kshitigarbha. So since Shantideva says that everything arises from the mind, it says that all the fear in the 3 worlds, or there's nothing to fear in the 3 worlds other than what comes up in the mind. the afflictive emotions, afflictive states of mind. So then in picking up from that, from the point, then today we've covered the section that explains that also good qualities depend upon the mind. So I think that we've discussed in the previous weeks how giving, ethics, and patience depend upon the mind. We spoke about, I think that in this summary of the perfections that we've looked at in the previous week in my class notes, let's put it on the screen. It says that completing the perfection of generosity is not contingent on eliminating all the poverty of sentient beings, but it is increasing the intention to give to the point in which you have destroyed your stingy clinging to all that you own, your body possessions and roots of virtue. And you completely condition your mind to giving them away to living beings from the depth of your heart. And not only that, but also giving to others the effects of giving as well, without. So here I added today another word that is another sentence that I took from Khenpo Kunpen's presentation. So I think that he's saying kind of it's not different, but it's just put it in this way. He also says word in this life for ripening karmic effects in future lives, right? So without any hopes to be reciprocated in any possible way. It's easier said than done, isn't it? Kind of when we give something because we think that this is good, this is virtuous, this is in line with our practice. It's hard to do it without any expectation for good karma. No, we do think about it as that's going to boost, isn't it? At least I sometimes think about it like that. Anyway, so without the expectation for that.
That's not bad in itself. I mean, you know, to think of behaving in a virtuous way.
Well, it's not that it's not. I think that probably what Khenpo Kunpen is implying here is generosity ethic. You do so in knowing that they are virtue results in happiness or happy states of rebirth. So you can definitely acknowledge that, but you don't become. Sorry, the internet just dropped out. So you don't become generous mainly because you think that if I'm generous now, I'm going to have resources in the future. So in that sense, your main expectation is not to be rewarded in the future. You can still kind of think that if I practice generosity now, I will have resources in the future. If I have resources in the future, I'll be able to benefit others in a better way. So in that sense, it's not that you have personal or private expectations to be rewarded in the future. You just account for how giving is meritorious. And if you have enough merit, you'll be able to be of better benefit to others.
Well, and is essential to, progressing along the path.
Yes.
So can we unpackage the word fearlessness? I was thinking about, I've been thinking about fearlessness. What are other people's thoughts on what is the meaning of fearlessness?
In what context?
Practicing generosity of fearlessness. What does that? What are you
Generosity of protection from fear. It's not fearlessness. Generosity
Mm.
protection.
So how do you do that? What does that mean? What are you doing?
Like saving animals that are going to kill. Right.
Often gratitude to someone that's like in a fearful situation, so you show fearlessness.
Or preventing the fear arising in someone's mind when you're a health worker and someone's got COVID positive and so forth, and
Bodhisattva and pastoral care would be giving fearlessness, down with fearlessness.
Protection from feelings. Fearlessness.
You know, you can protect others from suffering, from fear, sorry, related to the physical level or to the mental level. So I think that many of you spoke about, for example, protecting the lives of others. Or you just said something where I thought that, yeah, I forgot what you said.
That fear doesn't arise in, well, you do what you can, but
Yeah.
fear doesn't arise in their minds.
Like if you're a healthcare worker.
Yeah. Also, you know, if someone is in a really kind of difficult state of mind, they might be physically well or their life might not be endangered, but they need some spiritual support or moral support or what have you. That's, I think, also under the umbrella of generosity, of giving protection from fear, giving fearlessness. Kerry says to teach ethics, even though it can be scary. I guess it's very contextual, you know, what's, yeah, all right. So, you know, it's yeah, kind of when you teach others, you have to bring down ethics from like a really strict religious presentation to a way that others can relate to. You know, and if you do that, then you help them avoid accruing negative actions. In some sense, you can say that that's also generosity of protecting from fear, although the fear might not be immediate and imminent. You know, if someone, like, let's say that if someone is a fisherman or a butcher, this is what they do for the living, and they're not concerned about their actions. So if you teach them about ethics, are you protecting them from fear?
If people like that, they create fear, the source of fear. But if you're doing no harm,
Well,
you're killing people, killing animals all the time.
I mean, maybe you can say, I don't have any like yes or no question, but maybe answer. Sorry, maybe you can say that even though, you know, if you teach them about karma or ethics, I mean, of course, if they're open to listen to it, you're not going to just kind of sermonize them.
Part in terms of what, you know, wholesome fear, fear of falling to lower realms, so being forced to take refuge there. You don't want to protect them from that. No. Talking about future.
Shannon says, it is problematic if there's this expectation that this merit accumulated through generosity will benefit one later. Well, I think that you can have like an expectation, or you can wish for merit from generosity insofar as you think that if I have more merit, I'll be able to benefit others in a better way, or I'll have more to benefit others. But it is problematic if you think that I'm going to do it just because I'm going to have merit. And if I have merit, then my situation altogether would be a better situation. In that sense, kind of being more self-motivated rather than others-oriented.
Because we're antidoting miserliness, and in that way, we're promoting miserliness.
Yeah. So I think that with generosity, so I think that we've answered your question, right?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So then we spoke of the perfection of ethics. So completing ethics said It is through progressively increasing your habituation with the attitude of abstention that turns your mind away from harming others and from the sources of harm you bring it to completion with that. Then with patience, completing the perfection of patience is to complete your conditioning to a state of mind wherein you have stopped your anger and the like, and you accomplish your purpose just by disciplining your own mind. You also made an interesting comment today, or rather than interesting, kind of an important point where it says that we need to keep in mind that here Sensorial realizes also practice giving. They also practice ethics. They also practice patience and the rest. So simply putting a stop to miserliness doesn't mean that you're completing the practice of the perfection of generosity, or that you have completed the perfection of generosity. You also need to, make sure that your generosity is motivated by bodhicitta, the wish to be of benefit to others. And where motivated by the wish to benefit others, you give to the point in which you have no miserliness. You've stopped it. This is the meaning of completing it. So the same thing can also be applied to ethics, because also here Sensorial realizes abstain from harming others and the basis of that harm. Here Sensorial realizes also need to be patient, right? It's not that they do not need to be patient, also need to have a much greater degree of patience that not to the one that we have now. So to complete those perfections means that you would do it also with the motivation of bodhicitta. So what I wanted to then do now is to look at the remaining 3 perfections and to just what would it take to complete those perfections, because Shantideva doesn't mention it explicitly in his verses, nor does Lama Tsongkhapa speaks about it in his Lamrim Chemo. So in the Lamrim Chemo, in our text, when we look at the verses that cover joy effort, the qualities of joy effort, absorption and wisdom, no meaning of what it takes to complete those perfections. So let's just kind of, I think, have an educated guess about what it would require. So to begin with joy effort, what would you think what would be required in order to complete joy effort? Effort is rejoicing in virtue, right? Bodhicitta. So yeah, so it definitely needs bodhicitta. That's definitely the case. And emptiness, selflessness, rejoicing in others and not yourself. Carrie says, fear of hellish rebirths to gain joyous effort.
I think there were, in the discussion group, there were 2 slides, one on this side, the side of out of producing because you don't want the other, and that inspires you to practice, a bit like taking refuge. And then the other side, that through your practice, as it said in this verse, that you will attain a higher, these absorptions, which comes on the next projection, the higher formless realm, etc. It doesn't explicitly say all that, but that grounds through inspired by that to apply effort, enthusiasm about enthusiasm. And it doesn't say that's the perfection of it, it's just these elements.
Also, Olaf is adding patience. So the way that kind of now we're thinking about it during the lunch break, and I thought that when you look at the first 3 perfections, the descriptions of how you come to complete them is explained in relation to overcoming the adversities of those afflictions. So, of those perfections. So it says that, for example, with respect to generosity, you complete generosity when you do no longer have that stingy clinging to the things that you have. You complete ethics when you've overcome harming others on the basis from that harm, right? I'm kind of paraphrasing that. And you've completed patience. Let's look at that again, so I'll be more precise. So you've completed patience where you have stopped your anger and the like, and you accomplish your own purpose just by disciplining your own mind. With ethics, it says, you increase your habituation with the attitude of abstention that turns your mind away from harming others and from the sources of that harm. So then at home, I thought that if I look at what is incompatible with joyous effort, it is laziness. Right? Laziness is said to be incongruous with joyous effort. So maybe we can say that also on top of what you guys have said, maybe we can say that when you have applied antidotes to your laziness, all types of laziness that keeps you away from developing joy in virtuous actions. So you've overcome laziness of procrastination, laziness of looking down on yourself, or discouragement, laziness in which you're so engrossed in things that are of lesser priority, how do you call them? Distractions, yeah, ignoble activities, right? So, yeah, this is how it is translated in the Lamrim Chemo. So, you have overcome your attraction to ignoble activities to the point in which you're no longer holding back. No, laziness does not hold you back. You're totally enthused about virtuous actions.
And the virtuous actions of the mind, isn't it creating clarity of the mind, or what's it, clear mind?
Yeah.
Joy of meditating, etc. The enthusiasm for that, but having the being able to, the clarity and cognition or something.
Yeah, so where is it? Is it this? No, ethics. So verse 15, although the result of generating a clear mind is Brahma and so forth, the results along with the body and speech will be weak in conduct. Therefore, it is not like that. The other translation was better. Okay, let's look at the other and going back and forth. It's hard to be totally, sorry, it's not one that I, there it is. The result of generating a clear mind is Brahma and so forth. Results of inferior practice endowed with body and speech are not like that. So here it says that the perfecting of the familiarization and enthusiasm also depends upon the mind. A clear mind of joy for meditating on the absorption of the first form realm brings about results contained within the grounds of absorption, such as rebirth in the place of Brahma. So just a note on that. There is a topic that is called the four Brahma Viharas, the four states of Brahma. It is said that it is linked up with the four immeasurables, but also it is linked up with the states of absorptions. So it is said that when you attain an absorption, and you attain an absorption through developing calm abiding, concentration that is calm abiding, then you attain the joy of Brahma, which means that you attain a high realm mind. This is like the realm of Brahma. You can attain a rebirth in that state. Wamo, sorry, Yeshe, you look a bit.
No, I just was trying to get that first bit. You said the four Brahmas of, what was it called?
The four Brahma Viharas. Yeah.
I listened to what you're saying.
Let's see what the dictionary says with respect to that. Sambe. All right, the 4 abodes of Brahma. So Brahma Vihara. Yeah. Sorry, I'll put it on the screen for everyone. So the 4 abodes of Brahma, same practice. All right, so first of all, it says that the same practice, but with a different perspective, is taught in the great vehicle, where it is called the Tzemeshin, the 4 immeasurables. So there is one that is referred to by the lesser vehicle, the one that is referred to by the Mahayana vehicle. So here it says there are parts of a practice prescribed by the Buddha for his disciplines. The practices in themselves lead to obtaining an neba in the state of Tsamba, abiding in the state of Brahma in the God realms, hence their names. However, Buddha points out in a conversation recording the sutras with the god with Indra, how one gets genes, it's Indra, or Devandra, Deva Indra, Kaushika, that the intention of the practice is not to obtain those states per se, but to move the practitioner to a more virtuous state of mind, which will then connect them with the main teachings of the Buddha, with the result that they will transcend cyclic existence altogether. So, anyway, so we have those 4 absorptions. They are high realm minds. They are not desire realm mind, but they are high realm minds. In order to attain them, you need joyous effort. Without joyous effort, you'll not be able to develop the concentration that is required in order to attain an absorption. Christine is saying there are 4 absorptions in the formless realms in Tibetan traditions too, or just the 4, which means 8 in total. Well, the 4 absorptions of the form realm, which is called just the first absorption, second absorption, third absorption, and 4th absorption. So that's in the form realm. Sorry?
The 4th absorption is on this
Yeah.
chart, says it's in a formless.
Well, then the 4th, so you have 4 absorptions in the form realm, but then in the formless realm, you have another 4 absorptions. You have limited, that they have different names: limitless space, limitless consciousness, nothing whatsoever, and the peak of cyclic existence. So 8 in total, right? So 2 higher realms, form and formless realm, each one of them has 4 absorptions. So then with respect to absorption, the 5th perfection, what you need to then, again, when we think of what it takes to complete the perfection of absorption, I think that we can think about it from the viewpoint of what you need to have overcome in order to attain an absorption. So what you need to overcome, I think that in general, is laxity and excitation. These are said to be the main faults. Now, keep in mind that Lama Tsongkhapa and Shantideva haven't really stated that explicitly. So kind of here we're just having a discussion about what would it take to complete the perfection, although it hasn't been stated clearly. So there's likely to be more in that rather than just to overcome completely laxity and excitation.
Laxity is the harder one, isn't it?
Yeah, laxity is the subtle one. Yeah, it is more subtle and therefore it is harder to overcome. I mean, in the sense that when you look at the 9 stages of mental placement, you get to the point in which excitation is pacified, but you still have subtle laxity, and it's so subtle that you almost don't recognize it. But you still need to recognize it, because without overcoming it, you will not attain calm abiding.
I think that just was I can't remember when, but he said it's also tricky because it's so subtle. You drag it up with you as you're going
Yeah.
It happens to notice it at a low level. It's quite hard to notice it at a high level. So I think
Can't remember how we explained that.
yeah, I remember you talking about that, but I don't know exactly the context. It's something to do if you don't sort of get onto it at the lower levels of shamatha. It's a lot harder to
You won't have to guess at all, because you have the course actually, you don't have to come back and run into it to inform the subjects.
I thought the Bishop actually said you could get somewhere. Even if you didn't notice it, but then you hit a ceiling like it's 6 or something or 5. And then that's when you notice, oh, I can go on to something here and you can't go further.
Can't remember how Geshe-la taught it, but it is the case that you cannot attain karma abiding if you haven't pacified excitation and laxity. So first of all, you deal with the cause level. So first of all, you deal with cause excitation, then cause laxity, then subtle excitation, and at the end subtle laxity. Without antidoting them or overcoming them, you will not be able to attain karma abiding. Do you mean concentration with equanimity type thing? I don't know. I don't know what you mean, Carrie.
She might be referring to, Geshe-la mentioned about, oh no, that was elsewhere, sorry. She might be referring to the 4 immeasurables.
All right. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, so there is immeasurable equanimity. Yeah, immeasurable equanimity is probably connected with one of the 4 Brahma points. Brahma Vihara. Anyway, we're running out of time, so I don't want to kind of chicken out on the secondary offense. Let's do one, please, so that I have my conscience clean. So, let's look at, sorry, just a second. Where is it? Where is the file? All right, so we've covered 13 secondary offenses. Let's look at the 14th. If you feel or express that bodhisattvas should not delight in nirvana, they should turn their back on it. Bodhisattvas should not fear disturbing emotions. They do not need to completely isolate the mind from such things. After all, enlightenment might be attained after circling in samsara for 3 countless eons. If you think and if you feel or express it, it is a secondary offense of thinking only about going through samsara. So here, the 14th secondary offense is dealing with, I think, a misunderstanding, a confusion about how bodhisattvas practice, or how do they progress. So I think that there are a couple of, there are a few things that contribute to that sense of confusion. First of all, we do have those teachings that say that bodhisattvas remain in samsara without fearing samsara in order to rescue all sentient beings. Also, in the way of developing bodhicitta, it is said that you can develop bodhicitta with 3 different attitudes. A king-like bodhicitta, in which, first of all, you think that, first of all, I will attain enlightenment and then I will liberate everyone else. So that is said to be a king-like bodhicitta. There is a boatman-like bodhicitta. Yeah, ferryman, a boatman, in which kind of you think that I will carry all sentient beings with me and together we will attain the state of enlightenment. Or there is a shepherd-like bodhicitta, in which you think that I will first of all liberate all sentient beings, and then at the end I will become a Buddha. So these are just different ways of different attitudes with respect to bodhicitta. But in fact, when you develop bodhicitta and when you practice it in the same way. It is the same bodhicitta with the mind that has the two aspirations. So with the latter two bodhicittas, you might be thinking that if I think about bodhicitta like a boatman or like a shepherd, where I will either attain enlightenment together with others, or first of all, others will become liberated or enlightened, and only at the end I will become enlightened, then I don't need to fear the afflictive emotions in samsara. I don't need to fear afflictions. I don't need to fear the drawbacks of cyclic existence. I can just remain in cyclic existence on end, because this is what bodhisattvas do. Also, together with that, I think that we can add to that another feature, which is being attached to samsara, right? So when we're being attached to samsara, it compounds a confusion with respect to that. So it feels quite comfortable in samsara, feel quite fine in samsara. We don't need to make a lot of effort in order to work against our afflictions, because to work against our afflictions is like hitting a brick wall sometimes, right? So you push and push and push it. It can be quite tiring. Sometimes we prefer to just submit to our afflictions, and we think that, well, we might think bodhisattvas remain in cyclic existence, so even bodhisattvas still remain with those afflictions. So it is a misunderstanding, because to begin with, fearing the afflictions is what is required in order to develop renunciation. I mean, not only for renunciation, also for going for refuge, we need to have fear. Without fear of samsara and karma and afflictions, we'll have no refuge. Right? Cannot be refuge without fear of the afflictions, or correct refuge, pure refuge. So if you have no fear of samsara, if you have no fear of the afflictions, how they impact you and also impact your ability to be of benefit to others, let alone not being able to train in bodhicitta well, you'll not even be able to practice as Buddhists in the correct way, right? That's the very foundation. So indeed, bodhisattvas have that courage that is willing to remain in cyclic existence for the sake of sentient beings, but it doesn't mean to say that they do not fear the afflictions. In all ways, they apply antidotes to the afflictions, they counteract the afflictions so that they will progress along the steps of the path. But they do not do it only for their own sake, they do it for the sake of others mainly. And from that perspective, they do not fear samsara. Any questions?
What happens when a bodhisattva has that fear is the basis for refuge, and then they're working on all the 6 perfections and everything like that, and it seems in my mind, because the doubt has come up, and what's been in my mind for they develop wisdom that seems to me that when you have a really strong understanding of emptiness, it's going to counteract that fear. Because the fear is based on believing that something is real, and I'm going to go, people are going to go to a real place. And, so.
Well, I think that when you develop not only a realization of emptiness, when you already have a correct assumption with respect to emptiness, and particularly when you realize the emptiness of your own mind, you have less fear about the afflictions from the point of view of knowing that the afflictions are not ingrained within your mind, they're not the nature of the mind, and therefore they can be removed. So
you still have that fear, though?
I think that you have fear of the afflictions from the point of view of, you think that so long as you're controlled by the afflictions, particularly ignorance, you'll not be able to, let alone benefit yourself or be of benefit to yourself in a perfect way. you'll not be able to benefit others in the perfect way. In order to benefit others in the perfect way, you need to need the dispositions. And so long as you have the imprints of ignorance, and let alone, of course, so long as you have the afflictions, you'll not be able to be of benefit to others in a perfect way. So this is what you fear. So it is said that a small scope practitioner fears the suffering of the miserable realms. A medium scope practitioner fears the general and specific suffering of samsara. And a great scope practitioner, let's say here a Bodhisattva, they fear cognitive obscurations. So it's not like this fear in which kind of your mind is completely overpowered by terror. It's more like thinking that so long as I'm controlled by afflictive, or so long as I have cognitive obscurations, for that long I will not be able to be of perfect benefit to others. So I have to quickly abandon, remove my cognitive obscurations.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because I was thinking at some point you can that like fear I'm going to go somewhere else, terrified sort of things kind of evaporate. It seems like you're saying after that you still have an intellectual fear of like, well, I'll still get these seeds and imprints on my continuum until I've got rid of those.
Yeah.
I'm still sort of stuck in this kind of stuff. How do I clear that for others?
Yeah, it's also related to what Kate is asking here. Could there be a difference between having fear yet not feeling afraid, not being afraid, not being terrorized? So you fear not being able to be of benefit to others, not being able to do it quickly, still being in samsara for a long time. That's what scares you. But you're not terrified. Kind of, you become completely active because you don't want to be caught up in those states. You want to quickly progress through the stages of the path so that you'll be free of that fear. So it's not a debilitating fear. It's actually the one that pushes you to do better. All right, let's leave it here for now. Thank you. May I quickly become Guru Lord Buddha and lead each and every sentient being to his enlightened realm because of these merits. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta, which is not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which is arisen never diminish, but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Tenzin Gyatso, please remain at this samsara end. You uphold the subdued moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majunnath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent praise, honor, in the three jewels. Protection of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.